Okay, good to go.
Okay. The regular board meeting of the Governing Board of Trustees of Romoland School District is called to order at 5:30 p.m. Roll call, Mr. Sperry, Mr. Sperry,
Here.
Mrs. Kleitz, Miss Kleitz,
Here.
Mr. Gary,
Here.
and myself, Miss Moon. Public comment for closed IDA sessions. Do we have any closed comments for closed session, Nikki?
No, we do not.
All right. Then closed session is called at 5:31 p.m. to discuss negotiations and conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation.
Okay, I think we've got everyone here. You can go ahead and start when you're ready.
We apologize for being a little late for open session this evening. Ms. Moon, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Okay. And we've resumed. Okay. The regular board meeting of the Romoland School District reconvenes at 6:28 p.m. Manny, was there any action in closed session?
No action taken.
Okay, thank you. We'll now I'll lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to go now to our governance norms. We agree to act with dignity, respect differences, build trust, work as a team, engage the public, focus on the success of every student, and work together for the common good. Communications, governing board and superintendent, call on Mr. Gary. Any reports?
Nothing to report.
Ms. Kleitz, anything to report?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Sperry, anything to report?
No reports.
And I have nothing to report. Mr. Payton, for the superintendent's report?
No report this evening, Ms. Moon. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to communications, public comments, and association reports. I'm going to read. Members of the audience are invited to address the board at this time on each agenda or non-agenda item. The Ralph M. Brown Act, and in accordance with the board policy 9323, limits the governing board and staff's ability to respond to comments on non-agendized matters at the time of such comments are made. If appropriate, the board may direct the superintendent to follow up on topics brought up in public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 20 minutes per topic. All requests to address the Board of Trustees must be submitted on the Request to Address the Board of Trustees Google form prior to 4 p.m. The regular board meeting open schedule was scheduled to begin at 6 p.m., but we are scheduled now at 6:30. Ms. Thaxton, do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do. We have a comment submitted by a Mrs. Nicole Penrod, a parent within the district. And her comment reads, I would like to know how the school district is planning to quickly reopen at the next opportunity. Waiting for the perfect time, i.e. trimester break, etc., is further keeping our children from the in-person interaction they so deeply need. If the county gives schools the okay to reopen, then our students should be back in the classroom immediately. I encourage the superintendent, district HR, and board members to expedite negotiations with union leaders in order to allow our children and the families who our board members represent to again be the priority of our school district. The school district has had since March 2020 to develop a return to school plan. You have had ample time to develop and implement a plan for families who would like their students to return to school and be in classrooms safely. With San Diego County and Orange County able to return to in-person learning, how are you guaranteeing that our students are getting the same quality of instruction that our neighboring county districts are getting? I do not believe that the current system Romoland School District is using takes into any consideration the social, emotional well-being of my students. I have always considered Romoland School District to be leaps and bounds ahead of other districts in our area. And I am thoroughly disappointed that bureaucracy is the apparent leader of our school district. The school district has time and again asked for patience and understanding from parents and families, and we have given it. When will our school district actually show up for us? Stop asking parents for patience and put pressure on your staff to return to school immediately upon approval. And that concludes her comment for this evening, and that concludes the comments for this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Thaxton. And I believe Mr. Payton will be addressing that later in our presentation. So I'm going to move on to Employee Association reports. Mr. Murray.
Yes, we have a joint statement from CSCA and RTA, and it is as follows. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Mr. Payton, and Cabinet. Both associations are glad to be at the completion of several protocols required for the process of returning students to the campus. This has been accomplished by several committees meeting and having lengthy conversations with all the stakeholders to ensure students and staff are safe according to the health department guidelines. From the news shared on Tuesday, which puts the district on a holding pattern for opening up schools, both associations will continue to work together with the district on preparing to have small group cohorts returning to campus for in-person services. At this time, both unions are close to completing the small group cohort MOU. We want to be comprehensive and all-inclusive because of the different types of cohorts, plus be in compliance with the continuous changes of CPHD. Once this is completed, it will allow several different groups, SLP, the Academy, and SAI, to start assisting those students with those targeted services. The staff we represent are looking forward to serving our students and helping the families with in-person small cohorts. Thank you, Mary Wigman, RTA President, and Ramona Massey, CSCA President. And that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. We're going to move on now to informational items. COVID-19 and school reopening update. Mr. Payton to introduce this item.
Thank you, Ms. Moon. I'll be sharing the presentation tonight with Ms. Weiss and Mr. Murray. They'll also be joining in on specific content. Mr. Butler, are you able to present that? Thank you. So I know we've seen this model before. It's the blueprint for safer economy. And I wanted to just touch base on a couple of things. Initially, if I could attract your attention to the arrow in between widespread and substantial, it says 21 days. When the blueprint for safer economy first came out, that was an indication that you could move out of widespread in 14 days. On the October 20th press release from Riverside County Public Health, it stated that Riverside County would, at minimum, have to remain in the widespread category for 21 days. And I think that's because we've regressed back in versus where we started the blueprint originally. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Of course, we get updates weekly. And so we don't know what the data will hold next Tuesday. If it is still not good data, then that 21 days is going to start back at day 0 again as well. Next slide, Mr. Butler. And this is where you can see how I track what's going on. And you can see that basically on about September 22nd, not about, the county moved into the substantial range. And just to help people understand, the schools have to stay there for the county has to stay in the substantial range for 14 days. So moving into substantial does not allow schools to open. And so you can see that quickly on October 6th, we started seeing data points that would qualify moving back into the widespread category. And currently where we're at right now is October 20th, and we are in widespread and unable to open. Next slide, please. So I spent some time reflecting back to March and kind of the roller coaster ride we've been on in public education. And so I put a few of the key bullet points here just to kind of refresh everybody's memory. On March 13th, we announced that schools would be closed through April 10th. A week later, that changed. Schools would be now closed through April 30th. And a few weeks later, on April 1st, it was announced that schools would be closed through the end of the year. Not an update. On June 15th, we started a 4-week online summer school for our students, as we typically do to try to mitigate learning loss over the summer. We had about double the amount of students participate this summer. On July 17th, at that time, the counties were under what they called a watch list. And if your data was not too great, the state had you on a watch list. On July 17th, Governor Newsom had a press conference that day and announced that any counties on the watch list may not reopen. That's why we were unable to open to start the school year. On August 28th, that county watch list transitioned to what our current model is right now, which is the Blueprint for Safer Economy. And then we have some key dates that I just talked about September 22nd, widespread to substantial. October 6th, the data started trending back into what would be considered the widespread category. And actually on October 13th, the county actually was supposed to move back to widespread. The county sought a 1-week reprieve from the state, and it was granted to see if the data would improve over the next week. And on October 21st, the county was placed back into the widespread category. And those are dates, but the spaces in between these little blue circles are not really circles. They look like a baseball diamond to me. But there's things that go on, right? There's curriculum development for our teachers. There's professional development for our teachers. There's communications with our community and staff. There's committee work. There's the development of new learning models. There's scheduling parameters. There's bargaining unit conversations. There's safety conversations in an ever-changing environment as we learn more about COVID. And, all of it with the intent of keeping our students and staff safe and learning. And I would just like to say to everybody, I'm proud of our staff and our community for their efforts up to this point. I think there's a level of frustration in a lot of different places because we've been at this for a while now. And it seems to still be evolving, and it makes difficult long-term planning because the data changes on a week-to-week basis. Mr. Butler, can you go to the next slide? So I'm going to ask Mr. Murray to share. We've talked about updates in the past, but we've been planning for reopening of schools. And so I asked Mr. Murray to share a couple of pieces of information, and then he'll transition to Ms. Weiss.
Over the last few months, we've shared information with the board about updates and progress we're made towards creating a safer environment for our students when they return to our classrooms. We recently updated our plan for reopening our campuses. I think our most recent update was October 15th. Minimal changes to it, but there were some updates based upon new guidance from CDPH, the California Department of Public Health. You'll also see a few pictures of some of the measures we've taken in the classrooms, including the student dividers that we have up in all of our classrooms. Hard to see what we have on this picture, but we have plexiglass screens for each of our student desks just to maximize we have the distancing between locations, but we also want to augment that with those items, and we have them in all of our classrooms at the elementary and middle schools. You can also see a picture down below. It has a white stripe on the floor. That's around the teacher workstation. And one of the requirements as we move forward is to make sure that we have a 6-foot distance between our students and our teaching staff in the classroom, once again, to mitigate the close contact between staff and students. And that's designed to help kind of give a visual reference for all of our students in the classrooms, as well as for our teaching staff. And the final picture is, we have these attached to the walls in the offices and in our health offices. And it's just a complete hands-off or hands-free device, and it's a temperature gauge. So when kids walk in, or we have visitors on our campuses, they can walk over, take their temperature, and we can identify whether if that one criteria related to a possible symptom would be there for COVID illnesses. And it's just one of the efforts we're making to create the safest possible environment by making sure that we're really addressing the issue of the possible symptoms that people could have before they come on our campus. If you want to go to the next page, Mr. Butler. We've developed and we've deployed signs at each of our school sites. Most of them are not up right now because we don't have many people on campuses at the moment, but we have large signs on the front of our campuses for our visitors who are still reporting to our schools for various reasons. And if you look at the very top, right under where it says safety signage, those are large banners we're going to have at each of our school sites. They are already there, but we haven't posted them yet. That really kind of capture the eyes of the community, the students, the staff, reinforcing the need to wear masks. The other signs that we have about washing hands, because that's a key characteristic for keeping the potential COVID contamination down. And also the symptoms. We have symptom signs in various locations on campus. And this is part of our efforts just to communicate that information to our students, our families, even our staff, so that everyone understands the importance of the safety precautions as we move forward. And I think we're ready to move on to Mrs. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. We've also developed multiple safety protocol trainings for all groups of staff. And on the left-hand column, you see the different protocols that have been established, the staff groups assigned to receive that training. And then you see that training has already begun by looking at the different training dates. We're in the midst of it now, and the majority of all staff members will have training completed on or by November 4th. Please change the slides. Actually, too, we're also developing the parent guardian training materials and video to be pushed out in English and Spanish, and there will be student training materials as well. We've begun small group instruction on our campuses. Back September 14th, many weeks ago already, we started the one-to-one assessment of psychoeducational assessment of students and speech assessments. And we started with contracted providers such as adaptive PE, occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavioral support. Those contracted providers began working one-on-one with students on our campuses. And then we layered in speech services this week, small group services beyond assessment, for having students with acute learning needs for speech services to have their needs met on campus. Next week on Monday, we're layering in the academy students in Mr. Connell's class at Harvest Valley Elementary, and they will be coming to the campus twice a week. Then after that comes our moderate severe special education students that are part of the RISE program. Students with acute needs in that program will be receiving small group services on campus at Romoland Elementary and Ethan A. Chase Middle Schools. And then November 9th, we'll layer in mild moderate special education students to begin receiving services in small group. So we're excited about the expansion of that. And we can go further by expanding English learner services and other targeted groups of students, which will be identified in the coming weeks.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So I tried to just give a brief kind of recap to the board. I know that you get updates frequently on our safety protocols, and as guidance changes, we always update our manual for our staff and for ourselves and train people on those updates. You heard me mention earlier, so what does this all mean basically? Riverside County indicated in their press release on October 20th that the county will need to remain in the purple tier for a minimum of 3 weeks. I mentioned that earlier. You have to meet the metrics for the red tier for 2 of those weeks before you can return to red. And so it's a minimum of 3 weeks. But if, for instance, 1 week goes by and we don't meet the requirements for the red tier, then we're going to be 3 weeks potentially again. And so there's a lot of confusion around this. So it's 3 weeks minimum before we can even get to the red tier. And then the California Blueprint for a Safer Economy, they talk about schools able to reopen for in-person instruction once their county has been in the red for 2 weeks. So 3 weeks to get to red at a minimum. You have to be there for 2 weeks before you can consider in-person instruction. So what that really means right now is we would be a minimum of 5 weeks away from opening school. That takes us through Thanksgiving break at this point in our calendar. And I will talk a little bit about some of the challenges ahead of us as we think about how and when we can open schools. First of all, again, I want to thank our teachers and our support staff. It's a tough environment when information is changing as frequently as it is, and I think they've been doing a great job. So what are our challenges ahead? Well, we have things like Halloween coming up, followed a few days later by Veterans Day, followed a few weeks later by Thanksgiving break, followed a very few weeks later by winter break. And what I can tell you is Riverside County Public Health has cautioned districts in our meetings that there's a possibility of spikes occurring approximately 21 days after any of these holidays where large groups of people may get together. And so, that varies by family on how they celebrate these potential holidays, if they do large groups or if they stay contained in their family. I would encourage our community to practice all of the safety guidelines as put out by the county so that we can return to school at some point in the near future. I'm very concerned with this succession of holidays and the potential for large groups that we could see spikes for the foreseeable future based off of information from public health. And coupled with that, then it's also flu and cold season right now. And while it doesn't make you more susceptible to COVID, the symptoms are very similar. And so having to exclude people based on symptoms, whether they have COVID or not, is a likelihood as well. So we're entering the time of year where people are very concerned. We're not the only county seeing some increases in cases, though we were one of 2 counties in the state to go from substantial to widespread. There are other counties that remained in their tier, but their COVID data did increase. They just maybe not enough to move a tier. So who knows what that means for those counties as well. And with that, I will take any questions or comments from the board.
So Trevor, before the COVID numbers increased, we were planning to follow our plan to open and bring the kids, students back and staff back. So now this has postponed that once again, and it's going to be a minimum of 5 weeks, and then including plus the holidays.
And I mean, I can't predict. Unfortunately, I wish we could predict long term what's going to happen. But I think what we've learned is, under the current system with the Blueprint for a Safer Economy and the metrics the guidelines that were given, the virus is unpredictable. When we saw a spike in July, when they started to open things up, and then they kind of closed things back down, and now I don't think we're seeing the spike that we saw in July, but we are seeing an increase in data in Riverside County, also in San Bernardino County as well. And so it's very difficult to predict. I know that it's hard to switch on a dime in an entire school district, knowing that, I mean, really the longest gap that we have between a holiday right now is between Thanksgiving break and winter break, and that is only the 21 days where they talked about potential spikes occurring. So
I know this has been frustrating. It was nice to see all the plexiglass that were ready for our students to come back. We're all very aware of the mental health, them being online. We are very aware of how hard this is on everybody, but it is reassuring. And I hope it reassures the community, everything that you've done and implemented, so that as soon as it's clear for the students to be safe and staff and administrators, that we're ready to open.
I have a comment. First of all, Mrs. Weiss, thank you for updating us on what's going on and bringing back our most at-risk kids. I heard something, Mr. Payton, from you that said we keep safety and health above all. And I think that echoes throughout our district. And like you, Mrs. Moon, we all want our kids back in school. I don't think there's one person that doesn't want our kids back in school, but it is our responsibility as a board and as a district to make sure things are safe. And on top of that, our hands are also tied because we are back, back into the purple. We're back in the purple and we've got to do better. We got to do better as a community. I don't know how many people are listening out there to this board meeting, but we have to do better as a community. And it takes each and every one of us. And it is hard on our kids and it's hard on our parents and our staff. But anyway, I just want to, first of all, thank our district because we are ahead. We were ahead when this whole thing happened because we had the foresight and the knowledge in our district office and our administration and our staff to do the right thing. So again, I know people get tired of hearing be patient, but we got nothing else to tell you. That's all we have right now.
Thank you, Ms. Kleitz. So very true. Any other comments?
Oh, I do have a question, Mr. Payton. I'm sorry, Mrs. Moon. San Diego, I know we're not in San Diego district, but have they opened up all their schools in San Diego that I'm aware of?
no, San Diego County has not opened up. In fact, I don't stay up to date by the day on San Diego County, but I think I read something about a week ago where I want to say about a third of their districts maybe had opened up. Others had plans to open up in November. And so I'm not sure of each district's progression. I would also say the same thing with Orange County. I read an article last week where I think it was 8 or 9 of the 23 districts in Orange County were only opened up.
And that's based on, and why are they open? Because that's based on, right, what tiers are in.
They're out of those counties are out of the widespread and have been for quite a few weeks longer than Riverside County, and some of them still haven't opened up based off of, different things that they may be dealing with, I guess. But I know that a lot of those 2 counties specifically, because San Bernardino County has been widespread and not moved out yet at all. But I have some colleagues that work in either of those counties, so they do have plans to open up, but I would say that the majority of districts in both of those counties are not yet open, even though they've been out of the widespread category for a while.
Because it takes time as we know. All right, thank you. I just needed some clarification on that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then prior to moving on with the agenda, a board member has requested for the board to consider amending the board agenda and adding an action item for approval. At this time, Ms. Kleitz would like to address the board to explain the amendment that is being recommended.
Ms. Kleitz, you're muted. Still muted.
Sorry, I popped out of the screen. So board members, as we know, we're still in the purple. We're back into widespread, and we have been listening to what our health office is saying out of the county and warnings of what our potential could be. And so that we have a little bit possibly more sanity, that we need a clear direction. I am recommending, or I should say it is being recommended, that the Board of Trustees formally amends the agenda and adds an action item to keep Romoland School District closed through winter break until the Board of Trustees, not us, right, has a chance to revisit it of the school reopening process on January 12th board meeting. And I would like you to consider this.
Thank you, Ms. Kleitz. Do we have any discussion? Well, I will add, I do want to share that I am considering this due to, by the time we get through the widespread back into the red and being in red for an additional 2 weeks, it's going to end up right about the board meeting anyway, and maybe we'll have a better idea of what direction that the county is going. So any further discussion? So the silence, I'm assuming, is no discussion. So do I hear a motion to accept the recommendation to amended section K, action items, and add the additional item to the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Can I second that, please?
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Before I call for a vote, I just really want everybody to understand that our number one goal is getting these kids back to school. But at this point, with where we are with the public health department, it's going to be until right after winter break. So all in favor, Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and Ms. Moon, aye. Being that the board approved the agenda amendment, item K1, adopt that the Romoland School District schools remain closed through winter break and until the Board of Trustees revisits the school reopening process at the January 12th board meeting, will be added to the agenda, and at which time the board will hear the item once more and consider a motion to approve the item. We will now proceed with section K, action items. So action items, as approved, we will now move on to K1, which is adopt that Romoland School District schools will remain closed through winter break and until the Board of Trustees revisits the school reopening process at the January 21st board meeting. Do any board members have comments or questions?
Just a point of clarification, Ms. Moon, that was the January 12th board meeting, just for clarity for people.
Thank you. Any additional board member comments or questions? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll
Do I have
second.
a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Ms. Moon, aye. Board member closing comments. I will, Mr. Aguirre, any closing comments?
No closing comments.
Ms. Kleitz,
None at this time.
Mr. Sperry,
No comments.
And Ms. Moon, no comments. So our regular board meeting is adjourned at 7:02 PM. And thank you.